Nowadays, gaming is a pretty easy thing to get into in terms of technicalities, but there used to be a ton of annoying things that we had to deal with. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 gamer problems that no longer exist. Starting off at number 10, it's all the annoying cables. So, do you remember, for anybody who was alive playing video games way back when, the cables. Oh, the cables. Connecting consoles to a TV is so much easier now because HDMI cables are just the standard. It used to be a huge pain. You used to have all these really annoying coaxial cables. They had to be screwed into the cable port, or you'd have the proprietary cable with the RCA. Either way, if you wanted to replace it, you would have to get one specific to your console because they all had different plugs, like I said, proprietary. But if you're using the cable plug, it was particularly annoying because you had to constantly unscrew like your SNES cable and swap it with the TV cable if you wanted to go back to television. And when we moved into the HD era, it wasn't automatically better. You had to plug in like 5 cables, and a lot of the time, at least 2 of them looked exactly the same. Better plug them into the right spot, it'll get this loud screeching sound, or the colors will be totally screwed. I mean, I remember a multitude of problems when that era came about. And then a ton of those plugins used to have those gigantic bricks that you could only fit like 1 or 2 onto like an entire surge protector. It was all ridiculous. The cables were all ridiculous. At number 9, do you remember having to buy batteries for handhelds? Like nowadays, it's much better. You aren't stuck swapping out AA's or C's or whatever. Nowadays, you just plug the things in like a cell phone. And really, what handheld are you playing anyways besides the Switch? Nice USB-C plug, charge it for a while, thing lasts forever. But way back, we were always trying to remember what batteries in the drawer were dead because we would never throw them out. And some of them obviously still worked, so you're constantly looking for the right ones. Like parents would get mad at you for taking batteries out of the TV remote or the handheld vacuum. Running out of batteries on a family trip was perhaps the worst aspect of this. Like let's say you're driving in the car for a number of hours and you buy some cheapo batteries for the Game Gear or whatever, and because it's the Game Gear, it does not last. And you don't have more batteries, and you're not buying more batteries, because if you were, you'd be buying them from gas stations. They're like between 3 and 4 times the regular price of batteries there. And your parents aren't shelling out that kind of cash for batteries so you can play a video game for an hour. How loud do I have to be to get them to change their mind? That's the question. And number 8 is controllers with cords. This hasn't been a problem for a couple of generations now, but way back when your controller had a cord and you accidentally walked by it and pulled the entire console down, it's just like the worst possible thing. And you know, Xbox did a smart thing by making it so the cords had like a plug in the middle of the cord, so if you stepped on it, that was what would unplug rather than yanking the console out of the shelf. But the cord itself was still super annoying. Like having to untangle that horrible mess of controller cords every time you had put everything away. It basically trained me to never want to put anything away. But because all of this yanking and stuff would happen, the controllers would wear out and the wires wouldn't work anymore. There is a somewhat analogous situation in modern times. Have you ever left your headset plugged into an Xbox 360 and forgot about it? So when you go get a drink, you just bring the controller with you and feel dumb as hell? Yeah. At number 7, I mean, there are games that do split screen multiplayer nowadays. We call it couch competitive for the thing we're about to gripe about to actually work. But people cheating multiplayer games by looking at your screen. Obviously, co-op games, not a problem, but competitive ones. You remember what playing GoldenEye 007 or Halo was like back in the day against your friends? Somebody feels a little bit like everybody's doing a little bit too good and just goes like, well, you know, I can figure out where everybody else is now, so I'm gonna. And all of a sudden, somebody who was doing bad starts sniping people and coming around corners. And you're like, hey, come on, what's going on here? And then you start cheating because that's the only option. I miss those days. And number 6, gaming on PC used to be a total nightmare. You basically needed a computer science degree if you actually wanted to build your own PC. Like, computer parts were significantly less compatible than they are today, so it was really easy to buy parts that just wouldn't work together. Like, there weren't easy to access guides for building a PC online either, which is something that today is just, well, standard. Like, you go onto Google and you type, I want to build a PC that does this. And you got like 40 videos and articles and walkthroughs and FAQs. You got everything at your fingertips now. Sometimes just getting games to work on older systems was a pain. Like MS-DOS gaming, where you had to remember what sound card you had installed for a game, and it wasn't universal how that worked across the board. You had to remember all these DOS prompts. You had to adjust available memory to get some games to even start. Really awful. Truly awful. At number 5 is having to switch to channel 3 to play game consoles, and parents getting super mad that the TV doesn't work afterwards. Like, remember what we were talking about with the cable? How you'd have to switch off the TV cable and plug in the game. So you would do that, and you'd switch the TV to channel 3 because that was the proper channel. And then when you were done, you would turn the game console off and you'd walk away, because that's what you really thought about doing. Like, I was like, all right, I'm done playing the game. So that's it. The world revolves around me. And then your parents would come in and be like, hey, why my TV don't work? So they wouldn't plug it back in themselves. They would make you do it, which of course is the most annoying thing to do because you're already in the other room doing something else. Yeah, this method of getting interactive entertainment onto the television was really just not the best for family relations. At number 4 is renting games. It sounds weird to even say nowadays. There's just nothing like that. You don't need to rent a game. You got Xbox Game Pass, you got Steam sales. There's so many alternatives that it's just a dead business. But way back when, the Blockbuster or Hollywood Video was the only place you could get new games, except it never had the game you wanted. So you're just stuck playing whatever junk nobody else wanted if you want to rent a game you didn't have and have an experience that you hadn't done 400 times already. Or you do get the game you want, but your parents make you return it early because they don't want to wait 5 days to return their movie. Or you rent a game box that says Legend of Zelda on it, but the game that is inside is not the proper game. You know, because someone stole the Legend of Zelda and put like Time Cop in it, which, don't get me started on Time Cop. But probably the worst one is when you just get a game that doesn't work. You'd pop the cartridge into your console, turn it on, and oop, nothing. Renting was an all-around big pain for most kids, but it's one of those things that is kind of cool to remember. Like, oh, hey, you used to have to go somewhere and other people who like games would also go there. It was cool to actually see people and associate some kind of gathering with gaming, but it also sucked in a lot of ways. At number 3 was infuriating copy protection. A lot of games had really elaborate and annoying copy protection that forced you to find like certain pages and instruction manuals and stuff like that. Like, there was this dial a pirate wheel on The Secret of Monkey Island, for instance. It was this cardboard thing that you had to reference for various points in the game. It was actually kind of fun when you had it, but it also basically was a copy protection thing. And if you didn't have it or you lost it, you couldn't play the game. That was it. A more recent annoyance was losing the physical CD key that came in a box. If you ever uninstalled the game and wanted to reinstall it later, you couldn't have misplaced the instruction book because you couldn't play that game again. That was it. You were done. At number 2 was dirty cartridges and scratch CDs. Now, as you know, physical games media was, in terms of having more control over what you had purchased, certainly better. Digital games media puts you at the mercy of these large companies. Like, if somebody wants to stop serving downloads, that's it. You're done. And with these game streaming services, like, if you think about it, tomorrow a game could be gone. Those are the negatives. Let's talk about one really big positive. You never have to blow into a cartridge to get it to work anymore. Now, this is particularly bad with the original Nintendo Entertainment System. It was built in a way where often connections weren't properly made, and believe it or not, the blowing into the cartridge actually didn't do anything. The thing that actually helped was that you were taking the cartridge out and putting it back in, possibly making a connection the proper way. It actually wasn't a good idea to blow into a cartridge. You could blow moisture in with your breath, and that could corrode the cartridge. cartridge. It was better to use Q-tips and rubbing alcohol to actually clean the contact points, but we didn't know that at the time, and also we didn't realize that it wasn't actually the blowing that did anything. It was that the NES was designed in a manner where the connections would wear out. Like, the little spring-loaded thing wasn't necessarily the best idea. This wasn't a thing that was fixed when we moved on to consoles that didn't have that, but that was by far the worst example of it. And finally, number 1, games where it was just impossible to know what you were supposed to do, and the only way to figure it out was to buy a guide. Now, there were games that were like this, that were designed to have you investigate every possible little thing, but that's dumb. I understand that it might sound like I'm complaining that games didn't point you in the right direction, but that is not what I mean. There are plenty of games that don't just give away what you're supposed to do at every single point that are great. I'm talking about games where you have to like randomly press some block in the room that looks no different than some other block or some crap like that. There was so much of that in the early days of gaming, and nowadays, while it may be a little bit of an overcorrection, they've gone maybe a little bit too far in the other direction, giving us sometimes very condescending tutorials telling us every single thing. I'm talking to you, Navi from Legend of Zelda, but for the most part, at least it's not a problem we're dealing with anymore. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.